Welcome to the independent review for the LWS Autowinder for the Ashford eSpinner 3. This is an independent review, meaning I paid for my Autowinder out of my pocket. You're probably wondering, why? Well, hello, I'm Lindsay. All right, why am I doing this? Well, I had some questions and I couldn't quite find the answers. So I wanted to be able to put some information out there just in case you might be like me looking for this information. So here are my questions. Does the Autowinder Flyer wind the bobbin evenly? What's the purpose of filling a bobbin evenly? Does it matter? Does it even help me? What's the deal with that? Speed. Does the speed at which I'm spinning matter? So what happens if my speed is inconsistent? What if I'm starting and stopping, or I'm changing my pace? My pace is inconsistent. What happens? Does it still fill the bobbin evenly? What happens? Because the flyer arm on the Autowinder continues to move. It moves at its own pace. So what happens? Will I mess it up? And of course, the final big questions. Does the tool help me with my spinning? Yes or no? If yes, then how does it help me? Is it worth the price? And how does it compare to the other options that are out there? So these are some of the questions I had that I couldn't quite find the answers to. So my thoughts were, I need to experiment. That's it, I need to experiment. So I need to perform two different tests. The first one is a comparison test. So how does my Ashford Flyer just stand up to the LWS Autowinder? Does it help me at all? Does it not? What's the benefit? What's the pros? What's the cons? What's it about? I don't know. So that's the first test. The second one is going to be looking at spin consistency. So if I start and stop, I'm moving at a different pace than the Flyer's arm's still moving. What happens? Will I mess it up? Is it still worth it? Is it still going to wind evenly? I don't know. So these are the questions I had that were kind of nagging at me. And I knew this is kind of the way I can figure out kind of the answers to that. But I know before I start, I know, like any good experiment, I need to make sure that I'm comparing apples and oranges to oranges, right? So it starts with materials, okay? It always does, doesn't it? So when looking at this, I knew that I needed to have the same kind of materials to compare. I can't compare different kinds of fibers to different kinds of fibers. It needs to be a very similar sample, if not the same sample if possible. So how do I do that? I'm going to use the same, again, 4-ounce Falkland braid. I purchased two 4-ounce braids, which I then broke down into 2-ounce segments, and I weighed them. And so here's me weighing these samples. So you can see they all weigh 2 ounces. If you'd like to watch the full video, I'm going to include that as well as the full videos of the Ashford Flyer and the Autowinder Flyer in separate videos because they are quite lengthy. But there are my materials to start off with. Okay. Next, again, to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, I'm going to use the same Ashford jumbo bobbins for the comparison test. For the speed test, because I'm not comparing it to the other, I'm going to use the 3D printed bobbin because the LWS Autowinder indicates I could use either my Ashford bobbin, or a 3D printed bobbin. Now, to be able to make sure that I'm spinning roughly the same weight of yarn, I'm going to be using two tools, the Diz as well as an orifice reducer. So the Diz, I'm going to start off by sending my fiber through the small Diz hole because I want to be able to spin sport weight yarn is my goal for both samples. I want to spin the same weight of yarn so I can, again, compare apples to apples. At the end, I'm going to use the reps per inch tool to be able to measure the yarn to make sure that I didn't spin, for instance, bulky on one and fingering weight on the other, that the sample of yarn that I spun on both is relatively able to be compared. The orifice reducer is the one that came standard with my Ashford eSpinner 3, which was the 5/8 inch reducer. I'm going to measure time with a stopwatch just to kind of get some other measurement tools out there to see if any of that it may not make a difference, but I'm going to measure time. My goal is not speed or how fast I can do it. Again, I'm kind of looking to see if it makes me more efficient maybe or not. I'm not really sure. Tension, I'm going to be measuring that roughly with a ruler to make sure I don't have tension set overly tight on one and then loosey-goosey on the other. But again, these are kind of loose measurements. I'm not really looking for answers in these categories, but I'm going to collect this information just in case. Speed. My goal is accuracy, not speed. So, slow to me is anywhere on the Ashford dial, which is the letter S, and below to the left. Cruising is roughly between the P and the E in the word speed. And cruising is roughly going to be D and beyond. That's turbo. Sorry. So, that kind of gives you an idea of kind of 3 speeds because there's not really a number on the dials. I'm going to use a third camera so you can see exactly how fast I am moving on the flyers to be able to compare those at the end. But again, I know it's not an exact measurement because there's no numbers and there's no real set measurement tool I can use there. Yardage. I'm going to measure yardage at the end for both samples on a Nitty Notty. Now my wheel, the main tool. This is my wheel. It was packed according to documents that I received with it. It was new. I purchased it new from Ashford. On August 14th, 2020 is when my e-spinner was, I guess, born or packaged. It's a Leo, evidently. Average use 6 to 8 times per month. Since then, roughly 1 to 3 hours per session. So I'd say an average about 1.5 hours. I do oil my machine regularly and I clean it after each use. Now, the age of my jumbo bobbins are the same as my machine because I had the 3 that came with it. Again, my machine came new. The bobbins came new at that time. The age of my 3D printed bobbin is approximately 2 months. I'm also going to be using the felt washer, the waxed cotton cord, and the lobster clasps also on my machine. If you are unfamiliar with what I do with these, please feel free to check out the videos below and the links, which are kind of going back and forth with the how to set up the LWS Autowinder, and also the other video if you're still struggling with the whomp, 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 whomp sound of the Ashford, you might want to check that out. I found a way that works for my machine to reduce that kind of sound. So that is what I'm going to use as far as items to keep things consistent between samples. Now let's get back to that experiment, the good thing, right? Okay. The first sample I ran was the Autowinder sample, which you see in the bottom right corner. You can see an overhead view. You can also see the speed dial in the bottom right side. Now, just for comparison, I'm going to add the Ashford view now in the top right section. I want to pause both of these videos for just a moment. Or I should say the Autowinder for just a moment. The Ashford video, you will notice I'm putting the Ashford Flyer back in because again, I used the Autowinder first. I'm putting my brake band back on. I did not adjust the tension between the two. I set my tension on the Autowinder Flyer and I left it the same for my Ashford Flyer. Again, I was trying to keep things as consistent as possible. All right, I'm going to speed up my Ashford here a little bit to roughly, we're what, 11 seconds in? Just kind of hard to do. So I'm going to try to get as close as I can. I might be able to just load out a little further. Okay. So here's the Ashford. I'm going to let it run for a moment. We're going to catch back up in just a second because I want to look at the Autowinder to see if I can answer some of the questions I had. Okay. Does it wind evenly? Let's see. Okay, here we go. Very thrilling, is it not? It's kind of interesting to see this because you've got the flyer moving. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And here it comes down the flyer or down the bobbin. So pretty nicely wrapped. Pretty nicely wrapped, I give it that. We'll add some music for effect here. Look at that. That's pretty evenly done, isn't it? That looks pretty good. But let's see what happens when it goes back down. Now, it's not going to fill the very top and bottom section of that bobbin yet, because the Ashford has a bevel on it. So if you look at it, it's the inner section has to fill first before that outer section can fill up. But once that outer section, or inner section, excuse me, fills, it will go over that bevel, like it would when we're spinning it with the regular Ashford Flyer. But I think we have a pretty, that's got a nice little twist there to it. It's getting there as far as filling the bobbin up pretty evenly. Let's see. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit for time purposes. I'm going to make it a little bit larger again to make it easier to see. And I'm at 3 minutes roughly at this point. That's looking pretty good. Well, beats me moving the clips. Because briefly, in comparison, at 3 minutes compared to the Ashford, I will show you what that looks like right here. Here is at 3 minutes on the Ashford. Yeah, I'm a lump in the center, aren't I? So that is what Ashford is like at the moment. So it's kind of lumpy. I'm going to move my clips every 20 minutes on that one, and I'm going to move it 6 times. So going back to compare them, I know the Ashford's slightly ahead, 5 minutes, but that one's at 3. Let me see if I can move the Ashford a little bit farther forward. We'll go 6. That's close enough. All right. Now at 6 minutes, I'm going to slow down so I can really look closely at what it looks like. So here's my Ashford. Kind of lumpy. All right, I'm going to switch to the Autowinder. Because right when I get to that 6 minute mark, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to make it a little bit larger so it's easier to see. All right. Now let's look really close. That looks pretty even, doesn't it? So my first question, does it wind evenly? I think that's a yes. So one question down, a few to go, but we're getting there. That looks pretty evenly done. Now we'll see as it goes on if it fills those outer bevels like it would when we use our regular Ashford bobbin or flyer. All right, there they are again. Side by side. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Wouldn't it be great sometimes we could just fast forward time? So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to around 42 minutes on the Autowinder, and I'm going to do the same. we go. So we can compare the Ashford. So I'm a few seconds off on each one, but you get the idea there. Let's check them out, shall we? Here's the Ashford. I'm lumpy. It's not a very nice thing to say to anyone, is it? So again, I'm moving the clips as we go. Just very consistent there. Now let's look at the Autowinder. Now that's an even lace button bobbin, is it not? Looks pretty good. Now at this point, if I had to ask you, which one do you think has more fiber on it at this point? Do you think that question even matters? Do you think they're the same? Do you think they're relatively consistent? So it's an interesting thought there on that one. I'm going to fast forward again because it looks like, well, I'll say this, it looks like the Ashford on the top has more fiber on it, but I know it's lumpy. I know there's pockets probably of air in there, etc. I know it's not evenly matched. All right, I'm going to move forward on the Autowinder. And I'm going to move forward again on the Ashford. Okay. And let's look at them again. So here, my Ashford, I'm lumpy. I'm lumpy. And I'm moving fast. I'm moving faster than I am. Look at the speed dial. Than I am in comparison to the Autowinder. So I'm going to make the Autowinder a little bit larger here. So you can see the dial on the Autowinder. Yeah, I'm just slightly moving a little bit faster on the Ashford Flyer than the Autowinder Flyer. But that, it just looks so nice and even, doesn't it? Let's make it look a little bigger just so we can see. Get a little close up in there. That's looking pretty even, isn't it? So I'm going to, one more time, bring you to the view that has both of them there. And let's look at it. Now, I know the Ashford on the top looks like it has more fiber, but I think it's because of the lumpy and unevenness of it. It makes my eyes think that there's more there. But doesn't mean that there's that much, it's not that dense. It could be where there's some gaps. Because again, the yarn is not being evenly wrapped in those segments. It's just being wrapped. And it's kind of following whichever direction. Now the Autowinder is filling the bobbin from center to out. And you can see again, it's filled the entire bobbin up. It's covered the bevels and all that. So as far as space efficiency, I could see where the Autowinder, which is the one on the bottom, I could fit more fiber on it because I'm being more efficient. I will say this, there might be instances where I know that bobbin can hold 8 ounces or whatnot, but because of the way it's stacked, or I've wrapped it on there, it may not hold that much. Just because the bobbin says it holds that doesn't mean the way I wrapped it is the best and most efficient way to get that amount on there. I'm going to speed up just slightly on the Ashford. Okay. Let's go over there. Okay. On 116, I'm going to speed up again on the Autowinder. Okay. Something amazing is about to happen. One of these is about to finish. I run out of their 2-ounce sample of fiber. Now remember, using the same 2-ounce amount of fiber. They both are using the same amounts of fiber. Now you can see by the speed dial that the Autowinder is moving slightly slower, just slightly, a hair slower than the Ashford. So the Ashford's slightly faster. Which one is going to run out of fiber first? So which one is going to complete its 2-ounce sample first? If you have a guess, throw it in the chat. 1 minute, 1 hour, 17 minutes, 58 seconds. So 1 hour, 17 minutes, 58 seconds. The Autowinder is done. Just finished the Autowinder. So that is done. So let's look at that one real quick. I'm going to leave the Ashford running. Let's look at it more closely. This looks pretty good. Again, it did answer the question, does it wind evenly? Yes, I think we can definitely say yes. Yes, it does wind evenly without kind of a doubt there. But let's look a little further too. Again, I'm a little bit slower in the speed, but I wonder if that even matters, or a little bit faster in the speed. But I will say, looking at, I moved the clip 6 times on the Ashford. Each time it was less than 7 to 10 seconds roughly is the average. So that's not a significant amount of time. So this should be finishing, if it's, 10 by 60, roughly what, that's a minute? So the Ashford should be done here soon, right? Let's see how much longer it takes the Ashford. So you're thinking, yeah, maybe, it should be another minute or so, right? Especially the speed it's running, it should make that up, right? This is kind of one of those really bad questions of train A is leaving the station at X, but train B is leaving at, this speed. Which one will get there first? I know this is one of those really bad ones, and I don't mean to bring you back to school, but let's check out the Ashford. I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. Oops, not that much. So, roughly, we are coming in at around 1 minute, 32 something seconds, I believe. There we go. 1 minute and 32 seconds, 34 seconds, something around there. Okay, so what does that mean? Overall, let me trade these back too. Overall, the Ashford finished 15 minutes, 6 seconds faster than the Autowinder. Here is the end result of that bobbin, of the Ashford bobbin. It's lumpy, and I'm not trying to be rude to her. She's a little bit all over. It's kind of hard to see really the consistency in that yet. Now, when we look at the comparison, the Autowinder, we can really kind of see how much, I will say, more space we have left on that bobbin. What could we really compare from that? We will find out. So here is the Autowinder on the Naughty. And at the top, you have the Ashford on the Naughty. So you can see very, very similarly compared there as far as how they came out looking. On the Naughty, that is. Now, on the Naughty, the Ashford came out to be 150 yards, 150. On the Naughty, for the Autowinder, 156. So a difference of 6 yards. So let's look at the samples a little bit more closely. Okay. Here are the 2 skeins. The top skein is from the Ashford Flyer. The bottom skein is from the Autowinder Flyer. So you can see roughly one looks longer, one looks shorter. The top one, the Ashford, had 150 yards. The bottom had 156 yards, which is the Autowinder. Now, looking at them, when we did the wraps per inch, they were roughly the same. One was 15, and I believe one was 16 in one section. In another section, it was 14 and 15. So very consistent. They both are sport weight. The only difference, again, if you think about it, was the speed. So yes, I have some small flubs here and there. It's hand spun yarn. But the speed. If you look at this top skein, the Ashford skein, you will see here and there, like I pointed out, I have little flubbies where it's slightly overspun here and there. The Ashford, yes, because of the speed, there was a little more spin. So that created those little pockets here or there. But again, I'm looking at very, very tiny, minute. I'm ripping myself apart. Because who doesn't like to rip themselves apart and make themselves feel bad about themselves? No, these are pretty skeins. So I will say the bottom, again, is the Autowinder. It is so much more evenly, I'm trying to find the sock, pick it up. Okay. It is so much more evenly spun. It was kind of incredible. Now again, I know I didn't have to stop and reset the clips. I had to, reset and kind of get into a groove. But as far as my spinning skills or my spinning style, the Autowinder seemed to help me. It seemed to make it much more consistent and in less time and more efficient on the bobbin. That's kind of crazy, right? Let's go back to the questions. So, does it wind the bobbin evenly? Yes. So what is the purpose of filling a bobbin evenly? Well, besides the basic reducing wear on machine and the parts, more consistent spinning throughout my skein or my sample may assist with the technique. Space efficiency is huge, and also the applications to applying. So if I have my space is more efficient and I know the samples look very similar between bobbin 1 and bobbin 2, I know when I go to apply them, I'm going to roughly apply the same yardage or similar yardage together. That I'm not going to have one, for instance, that looks like it's a crazy number and the other one that looks like it's a Minnie Mouse, but it's just wrapped really well. So again, it might help me there with being able to apply. Because again, it's just showing you the difference between the two bobbins and the Ashford bobbin and the Autowinder bobbins when they came off. That Ashford bobbin looked a lot heavier. But we know that there is exactly 2 ounces of fiber on both of those bobbins. Crazy, isn't it? So does it matter in the end? Time efficiency on the Autowinder, 15 minutes, 9-second difference. Yardage, I had 156 more yards on the Autowinder. Consistency, as far as qualitative observations, it was better all around on the Autowinder Flyer. So did that help me? I would say yes. In those questions, yes, it did help me. Now, kind of going through some of the bigger questions. Let's see if I can answer some of these. So for this particular measure, on this test, did the Autowinder help me with my spinning? I think we clearly went through that, yes. Again, just more consistent in my technique. It was more efficient in time, more efficient in space. Yes, there was a noticeable difference between the two. Is it worth the price? I'm going to come back to this because I do want to see what happens when I have the consistency test. And I can't go through the compare options yet. We'll come back to those. Okay, let's go back to this real quick. The spin consistency experiment. Okay, for this one, I'm going to spin slow, fast, stop, start, etc. Again, I'm going to be consistently inconsistent. That's a goal, isn't it? So, I'm going to get my fiber. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. So, all right, you can see I'm going to make this a little larger too. Goes on quite evenly. I'm going very slow. Nice wrap. Looks pretty good, right? So, okay, at a slow speed, looks good too. Not only at kind of a normal rate, but at a very slow rate, it looks good. Split the fiber. Yeah, that always happens, doesn't it? Never happens to any of you out there, I'm sure. But so I reset my fiber. I'm going to speed up real quick. Okay. Now, while I reset my fiber, I did not stop the Autowinder. So the Autowinder's arm has been moving in a consistent speed up and down. I just let it go. So I wasn't trying to restart it in the same spot where I stopped from. But you can see it picked right up and it's continuing to wrap quite evenly. Even though it started at a different spot than where it left off. And again, it fills the inside of the bobbins and then works towards the outside. So it will get to the very ends of those bobbins. but also too, I stopped and started it in a different section than when it, for instance, I stopped, it moved on its way, started again, it was in a different spot. So it's having to go back in and fill some spaces that I left in my inconsistency. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Now, I'm in turbo mode here. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we don't kind of get overwhelmed by the flyer there. Again, and I'm slowing down again. But you can see overall, again, it's still pretty consistent, isn't it? Yeah, I still see some gaps here or there. But that's looking pretty consistent. That's looking pretty good. Let's see what happens. Okay. Now, as I'm kind of fast forwarding, you can see where the flyer's going because I'm speeding up and slowing down. You see how inconsistent I am? Now, I'm going to go back and I want to look at this. Make it a little larger. So you can see that overall, even though I'm starting and stopping, very inconsistent. I'm consistently inconsistent. I'm winning that. The worst dating award ever for a bobbin, I'm sure. So it's still winding very evenly. And it's even filling up those end caps now, even despite how inconsistent I am. That's pretty impressive. So, in answer to the consistency question, I think we have our answer. Does the speed at which I'm spinning matter? No. What happens if my speed is inconsistent? It continues to fill the bobbin, and that V overlap, it helps it fill those spots that are left by my inconsistency. So this is kind of a cool little factor. So it really doesn't depend on, again, my reliability or validity, I should say too, as being able to hold a consistent speed. Because I could see too, as a beginner, needing to stop and start, readjust my hands, or even as a experienced spinner, spinning with something that's very difficult, or an art yarn. I might want to spin at different speeds to get different textures in different sections of the yarn, or for different techniques. So I can see where this would be handy on both those sides, from the beginner to the, again, the advanced level person, because of the way it's able to evenly wrap no matter what I'm doing, which is kind of a really cool feature. I'm going to speed up here really quickly because I do want to show you the end result, what it looked like. Okay, back up a hair. Sorry, fast forward. Here we go. Now, you can see, even when I threw at different weights of yarn, so you can see a little bit of worsted to a little bit of fingering, a little bit of lace, back up to kind of almost bulky, worsted, etc. You can see where I kind of threw everything at the kitchen sink in it. But it's pretty stinking even. Even Steven. Oh, that's what I was looking for. Right there. That looks good. So I'm kind of impressed with it. I mean, going from slow to turtle to, I mean, I was like an inconsistent teenage driver starting out. I mean, hit the gas, took a party break when my fiber split, came back. It was at a different section and just kept going. So I would say, again, beginner to advanced, it has applications for both. Kind of cool. All right, let's cover the next topic. How does it compare? How does it compare, and then is it worth the money? All right, let's go through just the basics, all right? Now, Autowinder, this is from the myauttowinder.com website. So it costs $290 plus shipping. So here are the pros and the cons. The pros, compared to its competitor. Now, its competitor, to give you an example, the flyer alone is $280. However, you cannot use your standard flyer, standard bobbins with it. You have to purchase the bobbins that have the gear system on it. So for one flyer and one bobbin, you're at $329. Each bobbin is an additional $49. So unless you're going to unwind that one bobbin every time you want to use the winder, which in my opinion, I would want to use it, especially for plying purposes, that I at least want 3 for just a 2-ply. If you're not going to pay for those additional bobbins, which for 3 bobbins and the flyer, it's $427. That is almost half the price. Well, that's more than half the price of my Ashford e-spinner. When I bought it, it was $800. I know the price has gone up since then, but that's almost paying half the price of my e-spinner. That's a little bit more than I'm willing to pay. It's outside my budget. Just being honest, where I'm at as a person, that's outside of my budget. It's a good product. It's just, it's expensive for what it is, and I have to use their bobbins, making my 3 bobbins that came with my machine useless. Which I don't know. I like being able to use tools and not have things go to waste. So that's one aspect there. Okay, another, again, the pro of this one though, of the Autowinder, again, you can use those bobbins, the standard Ashford bobbins as well as 3D printed bobbins. So that is a big pro. Now, yes, I know with the competitor, you have to pay for the bobbins separately. Yes, you're going to have to pay for the replacement to AAA batteries. I made a mistake. It says AA. I know that's wrong. It's 2 AAA batteries. But 2 AAA batteries, do you know how many AAA batteries I could buy for $50 alone? Not counting the 50 plus 50 plus, that's $150 in batteries. That'd be like a lifetime. It'd be impressive if I can get that far and spend it that much. So again, that's just thinking of my budget and what I can afford as a person. Now, there is a 3-week or more wait time to, again, from the time of purchasing the Ashford Flyer, the Auto Flyer, to receive it, or Autowinder. I do think it's worth it. There are some companies that make you wait a longer time, etc. Again, if you're looking for a flyer that has not been developed by the LWS company yet, yes, that's going to take longer because they're going to make it and test it, etc. But 3 weeks, it's not a lifetime. Their customer service, I did have experience in contacting LWS's contacting their customer service before purchasing. I was able to reach Sandy, who was absolutely fabulous, very quick to respond. It felt like she actually listened to me and heard me ask questions. Again, I did ask some really hard questions, such as the inconsistent spitting question. And how do you find someone's inconsistency in speeding up and slowing down? I give you that. And that was a very hard question that I don't think can be answered by anyone. But again, I got a response from a human. I felt like I was heard. It was very quick, and it wasn't a cut and paste response. So I take that as a positive there. Also, to note for both companies, they did have excellent reviews. There were 2 reviews for both companies. Now, this is for the Autowinder. So it was good to see that, again, this one and the competitor, there are excellent reviews for both. And I will say, as far as both are concerned, there are benefits to both. So I would say that there are outstanding reasons to have both of the kind of concepts. So whether you can afford the one that requires multiple bobbins, that might be based on your budget, where I know for me, that's a little bit harder of a purchase for me to be able to make there. But I would say this in general, that especially looking at the spinning inconsistency test, I do think a level winder would be a valuable spinning tool, and I do mean a valuable tool for both beginners as well as the intermediate and advanced. There's different reasons for it, which I do think sometimes it's rare for us to find a tool that has so many applications and can grow with your level. So as far as the price, is it worth it in general? For either winder, the competitor or the LWS, I do think, yes, it's definitely worth the price. As far as speed efficiency, time efficiency, I mean, those are bonuses. But spin efficiency and being able to refine and hone your technique as a spinner, I think is kind of important. And I do think that is a big benefit. So overall, I would say the LWS Autowinder was very, very helpful. I'm keeping it. Sorry, it's not going to be on any fiberboard for resale. Wah, wah, wah. I know. So it's mine. But if you're interested in trying it, go for it. I'd say either one, again, would be very helpful. My thing, though, I will say one of the positives that I noticed, and now again, I will say I do have the Woolly Winder, and I did test the Woolly Winder. My one issue that I had with the woolly winder, and this is related to one instance, well, I'd say one instance with two different kinds of fibers that I rarely use. Okay, the old Norwegian fiber, which I was using for breed study, as well as the Herdwick fiber that I was using for breed study. These are two fibers I normally do not spin. I normally spin Merino, Corriedale, Targhee, Shetland, etc. So these were two that kind of outside my zone anyway. They have some very coarse, rough fibers mixed in with some keratin fibers. So they're sloughing some things off here and there. And when they slough it off, some of the outer, the more coarser guard hair per se, was getting kind of caught up in the gears of the competitor. So where the Autowinder is able to fall kind of through, because again, there's the gap in the front and the gap in the bottom, and the internal mechanisms are covered over by that wormhole. So it's not getting trapped and wrapped up in the Autowinder. That was a bonus because I did have to stop with the woolly winder to clean it out. Now again, I want to specifically say these were two very small instances with the competitor. I'm not trying to say anything wrong with the competitor. That was just what happened with me, and I just want to be honest, I had to stop and clean it out. It took maybe not even 4 or 5 seconds to clean it out, but I did have to stop just to clean it out because it kind of got a little stuck in the gears, because the gears are exposed on the inside where the fiber is going through. So that was just my experience there. I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker. Other than the price for me, that was a big deal breaker. And also the reliability, I think some things there, having to purchase so many bobbins. I don't like having that much stuff. I like being able to put things in a bag and go and spin if I want to, outside, wherever, and travel a little bit. So I also have concerns regarding space efficiency in general. But for me, I like the LWS Autowinder. You want to try it? Check it out. The website is myauttowinder.com. And as a friendly reminder, if you would like to spin with us, we would love to spin with you. So check out Camp Yarnsie. We have a weekly spinning group, which is absolutely fun, filled with a lot of colorful personalities. We meet on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, and 5 p.m. Pacific. We are a fun-loving group. We are conducting a breed study through this year that we are looking at the breeds as well as mixing the breeds and finding different applications to use with the fibers. It's been a lot of fun. So if you're interested in checking us out, you can get the link to that event at yarnsie.com. If you felt this was helpful, check out more of our tips and tricks, and you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel. If I did a good job today, I know this is a lot of information, and you're still awake, feel free to give me a thumbs up, which is an atta girl. You can follow Camp Yarnsie on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, as well as our Ravelry group, which is, of course, named Camp Yarnsie. I'd like to thank you for watching and for all of you for supporting Camp Yarnsie. I'm Lindsay Lichtenstein, and I will leave you as I always do with my favorite saying in the whole wide world. Once a Yarnsie, always a Yarnsie.